Hi everyone, Shafiq here. Now that you know why finding a compelling problem for a defined set of customers is the first milestone in getting through market validation phase, we're going to pivot to answering questions submitted by founders like yourself. But before we do, I want to remind you to subscribe to our YouTube channel somewhere over here with Steven's Magic, as well as click on the notification bell so you can gain immediate access to our latest episodes. All right, Steven, are you ready with our first question?
All right, hey there, Shafiq. I do have our first question, and it's a perfect one to kick off this edition of Founders Forum, as you and I both have had similar questions asked of us by founders during our live events. So this founder is pretty early in his journey as he's at the beginning of market validation, and his question is, I did my customer discovery using surveys and got a decent response from doing that, which confirmed my hypothesis about the problem that I was solving, but when I went to use the survey results to build my initial marketing campaign, it didn't work out. What am I doing wrong here?
Oh, where to start on this one? Okay, so the problem with surveys is unless you're trained in the science of survey design, you can easily create confirmation bias in the results. That means the data you've collected gave you a false positive about the validity of your hypothesis. So in our experience, founders make this mistake using surveys to gain insights. And of course, surveys aren't designed to help you gain insights. They're designed to measure the frequency of occurrence within a target population of any given question. And my assumption underneath that is the survey you're using has multiple choices. And they're not open-ended questions. We don't consider open-ended questions as surveys. They're just another form of customer discovery, but not nearly as effective as in-person or face-to-face discovery, even if it's remote. So surveys are best used to confirm the frequency of insights you gain through customer interviews or direct observation techniques discussed by Steven at the beginning of this workshop. Now, my answer assumes you did the survey incorrectly and the results you received were of little or no value. However, it could also be that you did the survey correctly, but didn't know how to use the results for generating your marketing campaign. So in other words, your messaging failed to create awareness of the problem with users and more importantly, failed to get them to act. Which means you may understand the problem correctly, but your user surveys failed at translating that understanding into an actual message that can activate your target customers. The best method for detecting where the failure in your process is by performing the existing alternative analysis that Steven mentioned in the workshop. So if your message clearly aligns with the problem with existing alternatives, then likely you understand the problem incorrectly. I know you're thinking, how can that be? My messaging is clearly describing the problem with existing alternatives. How can I understand the problem incorrectly? Well, the difference is in the perception versus the reality of the problem. And what we mean by that is perception relates to how customers, the language and the words customers would use to describe the problem, whereas the reality is what you would use and describing it in technical terms. So you're likely describing the problem, describing the reality of the problem, which in our experience usually means you're using the technical language to describe the problem, whereas your target customers have a completely different perception of how they experience a problem. So let's look at a quick example. Let's see, we're recording this around 9 a.m. in the morning. So I know right now Steven is ready for his second breakfast. So even though Steven looks like a really tall elf, he really is a hobbit when it comes to eating habits. So if you had a great breakfast item to sell, you wouldn't create awareness of your product by saying, Steven, gastrointestinal tracts feeling empty? Try our gastro nutrition bar. I would kind of like not get Steven to respond much because he wouldn't know what the hell you're talking about. Now, the language I use, of course, gastrointestinal tract feeling empty means he's hungry, right? So while the above is technically accurate, it's not very hobbit friendly. Instead, you might try something like this. Looking for that perfect second breakfast snack? Try our Sleepy Hollow mushroom bars. Just one bite and you can last until the 11Zs. So to summarize, to summarize my answer, instead of using surveys, try customer interviews. And if your messaging is not working, pay attention to the language you use in your message. Make sure the words are the same as those used by your customer and aren't filled with technical jargon. Stephen, you have anything to add to my explanation around technical jargon?
Yeah, joke's on you. I already have my second breakfast waiting off camera, so haha, I already got it. Okay, yeah, so there would be something I'd like to add. Founders who are watching this, y'all got to remember that the customers want to know how your product or service is going to make their life better for them, not how your product works using technical jargon, just as Shafiq described. So let's go with one more example. It kind of came to my mind as I was listening to Shafiq. So take it as an example, you're selling to a mom, and the mom, and you have an electric car startup. So the mom wants to know that the electric car that you're trying to sell to her is either safe, reliable, or cost less, especially compared to her other options. Frankly, she's not interested in knowing that your electrical motor has 25,000 windings, because that technical detail won't be what wins you any favors with that mom. It's not because she doesn't understand the technical aspect of it. It's just that's not the problem she's worried about. If you think about it another way, as founders, we're so engrossed in our startup idea, especially our solution, and we often surround ourselves with teammates and advisors who are also consumed by the same topic. We kind of have a tendency to become myopic and really consumed with our idea altogether. So Shafiq, you provided a great dissection of how to understand what may not have worked for this founder who chose to go the route of surveys over interviews during customer discovery. But the part that I'd like to emphasize most of all that founders really need to pay attention to what you said, which is it's important that founders remember their customer's point of view. Okay, we have our next question here, Shafiq, and this one comes from a founder with previous startup experience who's starting a new venture. And let's see, while he likes the Building Lean series, he still doesn't quite understand our emphasis on the scientific approach. So his question is, you guys keep talking about hypotheses, assumptions, and experiments like we're still in science class. I'm just trying to build my business. I don't get why I need to waste my time coming up with a hypothesis. It's not like I'm trying to invent a cure for a disease.
Okay, so the scientific approach question, that's a great one. So, well, let me speak from my own experience. After having started 7 businesses over 20 years earlier in my career, I learned firsthand the perils of winging it and going on gut feel. And what I mean by that is, I got lots of scraped knees, okay? I fell down hard and lost lots of money. So while my instincts have been useful to me in times of stress, they are no substitute for analyzing data and basing a decision on real evidence from the marketplace. So our whole process is based on using a scientific approach, because making business decisions on instinct can lead to catastrophic financial consequences on the business. And again, I can personally testify to that, having done that earlier in my career. That is why we emphasize the scientific methodology and specifically treating everything you currently believe but don't have any evidence of as a hypothesis. Your task is to quickly figure out how, if your hypothesis is true, which means you need to set up a defined experiment that will help you validate your hypothesis, in which case you can move forward with confidence that your decision is based on real market data and not just gut instinct. Or you will invalidate your hypothesis, but in the process learn the insights you need to formulate your new revised hypothesis that helps you rethink your go-forward plan. So back to the different aspect of your business and the assumptions you have made. Let's kind of enumerate through them. If you don't have any customers and are building a product, then you have assumed you're solving a compelling problem for your target customers. And you've also assumed that you can reach your target customers, and you understand that the price they're willing to pay to have you solve the problem for them. And you've also assumed that you can solve the problem in a way that is going to make it worthwhile for customers to switch to your solution, and that it is technically feasible for you to solve the problem in a compelling way, and that you can help your customers adopt the solution fast. And finally, you can scale the marketing, selling, and production and delivery of your product fast. all these assumptions need to be validated. And the best and most optimal method for validating these assumptions is to use the Building Lean process that we've outlined in this series of workshops, because there is no faster, cheaper method that we're aware of that you can consistently use to convert an idea into a thriving business with sustainable growth rates. So that is why we emphasize the scientific approach. It helps you avoid costly mistakes while helping you build out the key business functions fast, while detecting and eliminating the fatal flaws inherent in every initial business idea. Stephen, would you like to add your thoughts on how the Building Lean process helps refine great idea, the ideas that seem great on paper into one that actually work in the marketplace?
Yeah, and I think you're being modest about your experience, because you've had some tremendous successes, and I know the ones that the startups that you've had the most success with, it's that discipline you guys have had relative to following a scientific approach. So what comes to mind to me is when founders ask us, because it happens, quite often, they ask us about our use of the scientific process, especially when they're applying to our incubator and they're considering joining our incubator over other incubators and accelerators. I noticed that their question related to the scientific process comes from a place of wanting to enjoy the art of building their startup. So I've actually thought a lot about that perspective, as it makes a lot of sense from the founder's point of view. So in my perspective, the science and art of building a business are not mutually exclusive. And for that matter, great artists, when you think about it, throughout world history and even now, they study the underlying science of their medium of expression. And they do that in pursuit of mastery, which frankly is why you and I chose the name of our incubator as the LeanMastery Incubator, as we believe great startups are built based upon the founders' mastery of lean processes, which in turn enables those founders to use their own artistic approach when creatively expressing their startup idea in terms of marketing, sales, product development, customer adoption, scale, all those critical business functions and capacity. And I think that message really resonates with the founders we've talked about, because we seem to have a good hit rate with people who had applied to the incubator and joined, because they recognize the clear value of following a dedicated scientific approach helps them to achieve their dreams. Okay, all right, last question here, Speak. And this one comes from someone a bit different than the founders who've been submitting questions to us so far. All right, so brace for this one. This question comes from an enterprise IT project manager who's responsible for internal innovation. So now, just like the person who submitted the previous question, she does love our new Building Lean series, as well as our agile approach to developing new solutions. So the scientific approach issue, probably not so much of a problem for her. What she is struggling with is she's struggling to figure out how best to apply what we cover here to the internal projects that she manages, especially when it comes to funding and prioritizing initiatives as part of her process to filter which projects to focus on. So her question is, you guys previously talked about relative value analysis. Can you tell me how it's different than the ROI analysis that we currently use?
Oh, wow. Okay, so, well, there are many ways of performing an ROI analysis, and depending on the project and how much data you have available to accurately describe the current state as well as the future state, you need both to figure out the difference between the two states in terms of dollars in order to figure out the savings, which then to figure out the ROI, you take the savings divided by the investment required, and there you have the ROI calculation, right? As well as a time frame on which that ROI occurs, because obviously the savings happen over time, and time is a function of the ROI. So in a nutshell, the ROI is focused on financial implication of any given project. The RVI, on the other hand, is focused on figuring out the difference in 4 different dimensions. Specifically, it is focused on the money spent, time spent, quality issues, and completeness issues related to any existing alternatives. In an ROI, you try to assign values to time savings as well as quality issues. However, we think that is counterproductive because time savings should be desirable on their own regardless of their financial impact. So if a project can reduce the time spent completing an activity from 3 days down to 1 day, even though the effort required in labor is the same, trying to assign a dollar value to that time reduction is an ad hoc exercise at best. In today's world, the faster things happen, the more competitive an organization becomes in their ability to keep the competitors from stealing business. So how do you assign a dollar value to time reduction when it involves retaining business and retaining clients? You're kind of throwing your thumb up in the air and you're coming up with some value that may be accurate, but likely is just a guess and leads to more questions than it answers, right? And that's why a lot of those kind of things get left off, because they're not direct, tangible things that you can measure and turn into dollars and cents. And then the same is true for quality issues. The less things that go wrong from an existing state, the better off the organization is for a whole set of factors, from employee retention to customer adoption and all kinds of things within the operation. So smooth running processes within an organization should be the preferred state. The ROI analysis does not try to quantify the financial cost of quality issues, but rather the degradation of the user experience. If the degradation is sufficient enough, and by user we mean stakeholders, right? Whoever is involved in this internal project and the stakeholders, and how their experience is degraded due to quality issues. If the degradation is sufficient enough and often enough, then you can count it as a meaningful change you're helping to make in the life of your customer, even if they are internal customers within the organization. The same is true for combining several different solutions into one coherent process. So the ROI analysis is much richer than a typical ROI analysis and avoids the ad hoc conversion of time and quality issues into dollars and cents. Stephen, now, if my memory serves, you're the financial nerd we have on our staff. So would you like to add your thoughts to our ROI versus RVI analysis?
I think you have this really well covered, actually. But with my notes, I'd say the one thing I'd like to add is, especially for someone like the person who submitted this question, as she regularly uses an ROI calculation in her work, it's that the relative value analysis is great at normalizing data, simplifying how to compare project value, and resulting in a balanced approach. So if you think about it, in a typical ROI analysis, non-monetary values, just as Shafiq described, non-monetary values are either ignored, or a monetary value has to be ascribed to the non-monetary inputs. And what this does is this creates more risk that the ROI model will produce errant results due to the increase in variables being added when translating the non-monetary assumptions into monetary costs. So let's take it as an example. If a startup offered a product to help dog owners clean their dogs better and faster, how would an ROI calculation account for the time saved for a dog owner? And for that matter, in this example, how would a founder ascribe value to the time saved for, say, a stay-at-home mom who's now faster at keeping the family pet clean? Well, most models would equate zero value to this mom, as the mom is not financially compensated for all of her efforts to take care inside the home, to take care of the household and all that. Even though real value is being created that has a real impact on that mom's schedule, especially if that additional hour of free time each week can be used for a mom to relax. Okay, everyone, as a reminder, in addition to our regular incubator process, we're offering a special cohort for our incubator coming up. If you have ever tried to run a Kickstarter campaign and failed, or had a successful campaign but failed to continue selling your product post Kickstarter campaign, or are thinking about running a brand new Kickstarter campaign, especially this fall or next spring, you're going to want to apply to LeanMastery Incubator by August 15th so you can join our Kickstarter cohort. Spots are limited, and we will use a rolling admission process. And what that means, by the way, is we're seeing some tremendous applications coming in. So really also means that the quicker you apply, the better chance you'll have to gain one of these coveted incubator spots. The Kickstarter cohort will start on September 1st, 2020. To learn more about the Lean Mastery Incubator Kickstarter cohort and apply, visit leanmastery.co/Kickstarter. You guys are not going to want to miss out on this, so get your applications in today. Thank you all for watching this episode of Building Lean, and we look forward to helping you be successful in pursuing your startup dreams by building lean.